Hi, I'm Doug May, and I'd like to talk to you about the production accounts within the system of community accounts. What do we mean by production? Where does the word come from? Well, the origin of the word originally comes from the Latin meaning to bring forth. So, what we're bringing forth is something out of something else. So, what are we bringing forth? What are we producing? Well, we're producing goods and services. Sometimes we also produce ideas, but let's concentrate on goods and services to begin with. Now, the production process to produce these goods and services comes from inputs. So, the production process is really the transformation of inputs into outputs, that is, into these goods and services. So, what types of inputs are there? Well, originally economists thought there were two major categories of inputs. First category is capital goods, think of fixed assets. And the second category, which was extremely important to them, were labor services provided by ordinary workers. Now let's drill down a little bit more and see what types of capital there are. Well, intuitively we think of a plant, industrial plant, and then we can think of, well, there's certainly within that plant, there's the plant, which I just mentioned, and other buildings around there. And then there's the machinery and equipment within that plant. So that's, for the moment, what we'll think of as capital. In labor, well, there are people there, workers there with various types of skills. And let's put these various skills into occupation. We'll call it occupation one, occupation two. Some might be managers, some might be sweepers, some might be other workers, but we'll classify them according to the skills. And in fact, we've got a classification system, which is called the NOx classification system, National Occupation Codes, which we share with the United States. And so Statistics Canada collects information by occupation according to these NOC codes. But in addition to these internal inputs, or sometimes what we economists refer to as primary inputs of capital and labor, are other external inputs, some of which are purchased. For instance, we purchase services, legal services, financial services, accounting services, marketing services. So there would be the services, but we also have materials. Consider our automobile assembly plant. The motors, the headlights, lots of the parts come in from elsewhere, and as the name suggests, we assemble them using capital and labor within the plant. Some of the inputs that we use, the external inputs, are not purchased, however, they're in some sense freely acquired. For instance, the infrastructure. We use roads to get to the plant. There can be water and sewer coming into the plant or going out of the plant. That we can think of municipal infrastructure. There might be airports which are quite close to the plant, which are also being used. And that can be an important part for the operation because it saves them from having to provide those capital assets themselves. Another part, though, would be natural resources. Firms, companies, mining companies come along and suddenly discover the natural resources, stake a claim, and use those natural resources. In the same sense that we may acquire land, but once the land is there, or we're given the land, once we use those natural resources, we may have access to the trees there. However, we have to think about this when we're considering sustainability, because once we use up those natural resources, they may be replaceable and they may not. The last part is something which is new, and that's the ecosystem. So consider a resort, the amount of sunshine, the type of weather, even the quality of the water can be thought of as part of the ecosystem. And once again, here we have to think about sustainability and the quality of the inputs which are being used into our production process. Now that we've covered the two major types of outputs, goods and services, the various types of inputs, capital and labor and other things, what types of producers are there? Well, we can think of producers into two main categories, at least in our formal economy: for-profit producers, government producers, and non-government organizations. But there's also an informal economy out there, which is extremely important to producing goods and services which affect our overall level of well-being. Foremost amongst these are households. Then, of course, there are informal groups. Think of this: collections of individuals which get together to try to do something for the economy, for the community, but don't have a formal legal recognition. And then there are individuals who work on their own, but not legally recognized, and they may be part of the underground economy. Let's go back and revisit the types of outputs. We said the two major types of outputs are goods and services. And quite often what we do is we organize these outputs into overall sectors: the goods producing sector, the service producing sector, and then we'll put them into various industries. Here in the simple diagram, we've just got industry 1, 2, 3, and 4. But in fact, Statistics Canada and other statistics agencies code these according to industry classifications. Now, in North America, the classification system we use is the North American Industry Classification System, so we call it the NAICS codes. And so each industry has a unique code. What makes the production system come together? Well, the whole process comes together because of the knowledge, skills, managerial ability, and leadership of someone within the organization or someone within the community. So there we have the production accounts. Here it is before you. At the center of it is human capital, the skills of the individuals, both embodied and disembodied, and we use it to produce production. Think of that as outputs from inputs, and behind that is a system of capital. The four major types of capital, apart from human capital, which is the most important, are produced capital, the machinery and equipment, plus the infrastructure; research and development capital; natural resource capital; and our ecosystem. In another video, what I'll try to do is to take you within the production and community accounts and show how we can get particular sets of data. So far, we can only relate to the entire economy in our output-input framework, but eventually we'll be able to go down to particular communities or particular regions and show the production accounts for those communities. And by the way, when you think of the overall level of final goods and services produced in the economy, what do we economists call that? Well, we call that GDP, or gross domestic product. Anyways, that's all for now. Thanks for listening, and we hope you'll follow our other videos as we take you through the production process.